Hi guys, today we're going to have a basic newbie's guide for getting your transmitters hooked up to iNav. We're going to go over what you need to do in the transmitter to have the least possible problems when setting up your mixer and all that stuff. So let's get on with the video. Okay, so as I said in the intro, we're going to be taking a look at the transmitters. I'm going to be doing it on both the X9D and on the Horus, so that covers the older LCD type transmitters and the newer color LCD like the Jumper and the Radiomaster, as well as obviously the Horus and the X12S series. And what we're going to go over is how you set up the model on the transmitter and how you get the gimbals going the correct way in iNav. So what we'll do is we'll head over to the bench and we'll start with the Horus, which will also cover Jumper and Radiomaster because they seem to be the most popular radios at the moment, and then we'll go over this, which will cover the older stuff like the Q-X7 and the X9D obviously. I'm going to put in along the bottom there will be chapter markers, so if you have this style radio you can just watch that part and then skip ahead. If you have this style radio, skip ahead, and then what we'll do after we've got the model on the two radios is we'll go into iNav and I'll show you how to set up the endpoints, if you need to reverse channels, that sort of thing. But to go over some brief points before we get started showing you how to do it, you do not set any mixing up in the transmitter. They'll both be set up as a standard aeroplane. This doesn't matter what you're flying in iNav. It could be a quad, it could be a plane, it could be a wing, it could be a jet turbine. It doesn't matter. You just set up a standard aeroplane mixer in iNav. You don't do elevon mixing, anything like that. One of the biggest problems I see quite a lot is people coming from traditional models. They've flown a flying wing before maybe, but they go into iNav and they see the wizard on here and they set up a flying wing mix in the transmitter, and then they have all sorts of problems in iNav and don't know where to go from there. So that's the first thing. You don't do any mixing in the transmitter, and for the most part you don't do any channel reversing in the transmitter. If you have a servo going the wrong way, you don't sort it out in here. There's only one instance that you will reverse the output in the transmitter, and we'll cover that in the receiver page in iNav. So let's get to the desk and we'll get started on this type of radio. Okay, so here we have our first radio type. So this is a Horus X10S Express. This will be exactly the same on an X10 Express, non-Express versions, X12S, Jumper T16, Radiomaster TX16S, Jumper T18. You know, this sort of format radio, this will all be the same if you've got this sort of screen. So I'm going to start with a brand new model just to get everything working. So we go into our model select, and what I'm going to do is hold down the button to create a model, and it's automatically loaded the wizard, so I'll go through that. But what we want to do is just set it up as a standard plane. Do you have a motor? Yes. Channel 3. Do you have ailerons? 2, but we want to change this to 1 or 2 with a Y cable. Do you have flaps? No. Do you have rudder and elevator? Yes. So we want channel 2 to be our elevator, which is A, which is correct. Channel 4 to be our rudder. So this is going to be set up for AETR, which is aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. That's the default order for iNav. If it comes up in a different order, it doesn't really matter. You just have to remember what it is so you can set it up in iNav, but I can show you that once we get into iNav. So once we get to this page, no, we don't want to change anything. Let's create a model and then press return to exit out. So we now have our brand new model, which will be our iNav plane. So I'm going to go in here, exit out to the menu. We'll go into the model. You can give it a name. So And what you obviously need to do is bind this up with your receiver, depending on whether you're using the internal 2.4 or an external module like R9 or Crossfire or Ghost or Tracer, or yeah, whatever modules come out. So you just need to set this up to your receiver, but I'm not going to cover that. That's in other videos. What I'm going to do now is show you how you would set this up if you didn't have the wizard. So what we're going to do is page through, and what you have is inputs. Now all you'd need to do is recreate these inputs. So what I'll do, I'll get rid of the aileron and I'll add it in. Just all the others are going to be the same, it's just going to be using the different channels obviously. So you click it, we'll give it a name, which is obviously going to be aileron. You'll probably find that if your transmitter's set up for AETR, it automatically chooses the correct source for you. If not, you just need to move the stick, or sorry, click into it and then move the stick. But we want this on aileron, so let's move the aileron, and that's it. So that's all you need to do on the inputs. So we can come out of that. The next page is the mixer, and again it's going to be exactly the same. So get rid of that one just to show you how to do it. Edit, give it the name, and then the source, what you would do is click it, hold down, choose inputs, and then select the aileron. It may actually select it by moving it. Yeah, so there you go, you can just move it and it chooses that input for you. So again, that's all you need to do, and you just need to do that for all those, but that's purely if you don't have the wizard. So that's it, done. We don't actually need to do any more for the absolute basics. Obviously if we're flying, we want to add mode switches, all that sort of stuff, but that's, I have other videos on that. I'm going to make another one for more basic mode switches quite soon, but I have a video of how I've set up this transmitter for my model, so I'll put a link up in the corner for that. But just to get started, so you get everything right as far as the mix goes, that's all we need. So the next page along is outputs. We don't actually need to do anything on here at the moment. You could actually label these for the AETR if you wish, but you don't need to. So that's this part set up, and what we'll do is we'll continue on this transmitter in iNav later on. So if you want to skip ahead, use the chapters in the description or along the bar on the bottom, and go ahead to the iNav section. Okay, so here we have our X9D, which this is going to be a very similar process on the Q-X7 or possibly some of the older jumpers, that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is press the menu button to bring up our model list, and we're going to create a new model. So you just press enter, create model, and it's got the wizard. So we want this one here, standard aeroplane. Don't choose this. You could potentially choose quadcopter, but it's on plane. It really doesn't matter. You could be flying any of these. If you choose this one, it will work. So has your model got an engine? Yes. Channel 3. Has your model got ailerons? Yes, one channel, which is what we want. If it says 2 channels here, like it has done on the Horus, just change it to 1 channel, and it needs to be on channel 1. So if you need to change anything, you just press enter and then select it, and then if you move down you can assign the channel. But we want this on channel 1 because it's A for ailerons, E for elevator, T for throttle, R for rudder. That's how we set these up. So we'll page through to the next setting. Has it got flaps? No. If you have a model with flaps, I'll cover this in another video, how to set flaps up on iNav. But we're just going for the basics with this one. So air brakes, no. Now elevator and rudder. So the 1 channel here is just how many radio channels it's sending. It's not saying that it's on channel 1. The actual channels they're using is here. So rudder is 4, elevator is 2. So that's absolutely perfect for what we want. But as I say, if you need to change them, just use your down arrow, press enter and choose your channel. But this is all correct. So now we'll page through. Gives us a final check, so A, E, T, R, all good, long press, and we're done. So now what we'll do is we'll page into the model, and we can give it a name, And of course what you'd need to do is set up your receiver. So they're close to the bottom, so you press the plus and go upwards, you get there quicker. So obviously if you're using 2.4 internal module, you would set it up on here. If you're using an external module like Crossfire, Ghost, R9, Tracer, you know, whatever on an external module, you'd set it up here. I'm not going to cover this in this video. I have another video for your receivers, but just make sure you set it up. So what we're going to do now is page through, and we're going to look for inputs. So this is where you'd have to set it up manually. So all these will be set up in the same process. So all I'm going to do is delete the aileron, and I'll add the aileron back in just to show how it's done. So you just click it, give it a name, and if your transmitter is already set up for AETR, you'll find that it's already filled in with the correct setting. But if not, all you need to do is click the button to enter, so it's flashing, and then move the surface or the gimbal that you want it to be. So this is going to be our aileron, and that's it done. So you'd obviously need to fill this in for the rest of these channels. If it ends up like this, sorry, fuck off Siri. If it ends up looking like this, you're all good. So next we'll page through, and it will be the mixer, and it's exactly the same thing. So I'll delete the aileron, and we'll add it back in. And again, if the mix is wrong, if you just move the gimbal, it will select the correct input for you. So that's all you need to do for each channel. So it's really simple to set these up. You just need it in this order: AETR. As I said in the X10 demo, you can have these in a different order, but you just need to set it in iNav. So I always just stick to AETR, it's just easier. But if you're coming maybe from Spectrum and you've bought a jumper, I think it's TAER or something like that, it's a different order you're used to. But you can still have it in that order, but you just need to change it in iNav. But we'll get to that on the receiver page. So the only other page that I'll bring up is the outputs page. If you wish, you can label the outputs, but the only thing that I will bring up is this here is the reverse column. So really you shouldn't ever need to touch these, but there's one instance when you do, and that's when the charts are going the wrong way in iNav. But I will show that in a demo in a sec. So that's the model on the transmitter setup. We're done. Let's head into iNav and see how to continue this process. I will be continuing the demo on the X10S, but don't worry, it's exactly the same process. We're just using this outputs page, and it'll be these numbers here that we need to change, and if we do need to reverse, it will just be this arrow here. So it may look slightly different, but it's this page that you want, and it's the same exact process. So let's head over to iNav. Okay, so we have our transmitter here on the bench, we have iNav here on the screen, so let's get into iNav. And obviously I'm not going over setting up the receiver itself, it should already be set up and working, but what we're going to do is head into the receiver tab and look at the details that we need to change on the receiver page itself. So as I mentioned on the transmitters, we have AETR as our channel order. That's how I've set it up on these two. But as I said, if you come from Spectrum or whatever and you prefer a different channel order, you can change it in here. All you need to do is make sure that the letters here match up to, if I head into the mixer, the first letter of each control on the inputs. So here we have AETR, so A is aileron, so you want aileron first, then elevator, then throttle, then rudder. If this was, for example, TAER, you would want throttle first, then aileron, then elevator, then rudder. But default order is AETR, so I just set everything up AETR, just makes life easier. So once you've got your channel maps sorted out, the next thing that we need to do is make sure that all our sticks are actually going the correct direction. Now what you need to do is make sure that when it's If it's a vertical stick, if it's down, it's at the lowest point. If it's up, it's at the highest point. So the throttle is bang on there. We'll look at the rudder next. So if it's all the way to the left, it should be at the lowest point. If it's all the way to the right, it should be at the highest point. So let's check the aileron. All the way to the left is the lowest. All the way to the right is the highest. Same with the elevator. We want it down to go to the lowest. That's wrong. I say that surprised I've actually set it up to fail, to show, just to demonstrate the only time that you reverse something in the radio. So if you find that going down is going down on the gimbal is going up on this bar here, it is the only time you will reverse in the transmitter, because what you want is down to be the lowest, up to be the highest. So this is, the elevator is backwards, all the others are perfect, we just need to reverse the elevator. So what we're going to do is go into the model menu, go across to outputs, go down to our elevator channel, and you just need to reverse this. You can see I've actually reversed it to cause the error, and normally everything's going to be fine anyway, but I just wanted to demonstrate. So that's the only time that you will reverse it in the model. So now if I go down on the elevator, you can see it's going down, and if I go up, it's going up. So the only other thing that we need to adjust are the endpoints, because you'll notice the throttle down is 987. If I move the rudder, it's different numbers. What we need to do is get these so that down is 1000 and up is 2000, and in the middle, it's just hard to show on the throttle, but on these two you can see they're at 1500, so they're correct. So what we're going to do is we'll set this up on the aileron first, and what I'm going to be changing are these two columns here. So for the low end point it's this column, and for the high end point it's this column. So we're going to be working on the aileron. So what I'm going to do is, you can't really see the numbers, but I'll swap them around in a minute. So what we're going to do is put the aileron all the way over to the right, which is our low point, and then we're going to click into that field and we're going to adjust it until we get to 1000. So that is 97.5. Usually it's around 97.7 seems to be about a good point on FrSky radios. So it's still saying 1000, so that's good for me. And now we put it the other way and adjust the high point, bring that down. Usually it'll be the same number if it's all calibrated nicely. So 97.7, and we have 2000 and 1500 in the middle. So I'm going to do that again for the rest of the channels, but I'll swap over so that we can actually see it in our iNav itself this time. So this time I'll do it for the elevator. So all the way down, we want that to be 1000, and then all the way up we want that to be 2000, centered on 1500. Now the yaw is actually dancing around a little bit there, so I should probably really just recalibrate it, because that's what it's going to be. In a normal situation it will be exactly the same. So I'm just going to put the throttle to 97.7, and the same with the yaw. So now we can see the throttle is 1000 to 2000. We obviously don't need to worry about the midpoint because it's a notched thing and it moves about anyway. And the yaw is 1000 to 2000. And you see now that I've actually cleaned up the endpoints, it's not moving about in the middle position anymore. So that's perfect. So this is exactly how you want to get your transmitter set up on iNav before you look at anything else. If this is wrong, it can have all sorts of weird effects. Like if you set up your mixer and a servo's wrong, but then if it's actually the receiver that's the wrong way around, that can actually mess up your stabilisation, all that kind of stuff. Like this, iNav is getting exactly the settings that it's expecting, and everything else that you go forward with will be right. Without this base, as I say, you're asking for trouble. So what I'm going to do is I'll follow this video up with setting up the mixers, because that seems to be the next place where people have issues with. So I have got a video on the mixer already, but it's a general overview. So what I'm going to do is create a couple of videos specifically for setting up a flying wing first off, where people have issues with reversing servos, and I'll do a basic one for aeroplane as well. So until those videos, thank you very much guys for watching. If you found the video useful, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Both of those things will help us get this video out to more people so they can get iNav set up perfectly too. Thank you guys. Fly your models like you stole them. See you on the next one. Bye bye.